Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Survive to Thrive via IsoNation. Today, I am welcomed by two fantastic guests. I've got Andrew Lavoipierre from ActionCOACH. He's going to be talking about the importance of business planning today, and I'm going to be talking with Nicola Roke from Danton HR, and she's going to be talking about hybrid working and practical solutions to enable organisations to embrace the new normal. And I will normally pitch in with my little element, and my element today is going to be around people strategy of the health and safety element. So I'm going to be talking from a COVID Safe UK perspective today, and again, some practical solutions on getting everybody back to the office. We've got a new return to work roadmap now. Version 3 lockdown has got an end game, and the UK economy is looking forward to embracing that new normal. And that's what the essence of today's webinar is all about. So for those guys that haven't watched the webinar before, my name's Nick Baxter from IsoNation, and we created this this community. It's 12 months ago now, actually, because we created it just after the first lockdown, and it was a great opportunity for business leaders from the SME community nationally, and in fact we've had a number of individuals globally to come together, share best practice and find ways to navigate the new landscape which was created on the back of the COVID pandemic. They then had a great idea. We've done IsoNation in it through its various incarnations during the multiple lockdowns, and Nicola Roke, actually, who's our guest today, she came up with a fantastic idea around survive to thrive. So, you know, there was an element where organisations were treading water. There's a great deal of uncertainty in the ether, and they were just deciding what decisions they were making around the long-term, medium and long-term viability of their organisations. I think that time came when everybody, and certainly I can vouch from a recruitment perspective, people were not waiting for an end game that was never around the corner. People were saying, this is where we're at. We've got to put a line in the sand and say we're going to still trade and we're still going to operate and we're still going to make business decisions. We know that we can't predict the future, but we've never been able to predict the future. But what we can do is do this, and I think that's what the survive and thrive element was. And it's been fantastic. This is the fifth episode, and we've got two great subject matters. The first one is about the hybrid working and how, from a HR perspective and from a people perspective, we can look at the practicality, we can look at agile working, but more importantly, we can look at this understanding people's well-being, you know. And then we've got the planning, the importance of business planning. You know, only 95% of organizations make it past 10 years, and an element of that is around them understanding exactly where they are now and exactly where they want to get to. And there's only one way of doing that, and that's planning. And a business plan that's in someone's head isn't a business plan. So we've got two great speakers. Thank you very much. And just to talk a little bit about where everybody comes from, Andy Lavoipierre comes from ActionCOACH. He provides a whole suite of one-to-one and peer coaching solutions for organizations to take their business to the next level. He's essentially a growth coach. And Nicola Danton, I know personally, because I've worked with Nicola. She's fantastic. She has a fantastic team of consultants that offer and deliver a whole host of generalist and specialist HR consultancy, again across that that SME community. So this is all really relevant, guys. A lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about today is relevant. Hopefully we're going to give you some takeaways that you can implement into your organization. But if you do ever need to speak to either myself, Andrew, or Nicola post the webinar, you can find us on our LinkedIn profiles. So without further ado, because I know the last time we spoke to Nicola's colleague Helen around the remote working and the hybrid working. Nicola's going to take a slightly different slant on it, Nicola. So just tell us a little bit about why you decided to do the session today, and a run through of the kind of things we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so I guess hybrid working is a term that is starting to be used more and more, and so I thought it would be a good opportunity just to really kind of discuss what hybrid working is and what it really means for individual businesses. For me, one size never fits all, so understanding what opportunities there are out there, learning best practice and kind of thinking about what other businesses are doing, but that, you know, then bringing it back to your own business and thinking, right, how can this work to best effect in the context of our own organisation? So hybrid working, yeah, something that is being talked about more and more. Hybrid working in a kind of short to medium term context, and then also what that means, what implications there are longer term as well. So pre-COVID, we probably had about 5% of people working from home. That obviously changed massively with lockdown, and suddenly everybody went to either kind of totally remote working, or some people continued to work in the office but on a very, very scaled back basis. So lots and lots, far fewer people working in the office. So social distancing, for example, was able to be maintained. People buying equipment, just such as, Nick, the COVID safe UK equipment, that therefore that was enabling them to get back into the office. But once businesses get kind of an amber to green light to then start to think about going back in a more permanent way, what does that more permanent way look like within the new context? What does that look like in terms of the new normal? So businesses considering what hybrid means for them. What does that mean for them on a practical level going back into the summer now? So many of our businesses, many of our clients, they already have a degree of people working within the office and some working remotely. Actually, some of our clients, they're all completely remote at the moment. So what does that transition on a practical level really look like, getting from this complete kind of 100% remote working arrangement, actually where technology is resolved, communications resolved, businesses are using Teams, they're using Zoom, they're using lots and lots of different ways to communicate and to work very effectively. There's this desire to get back to the office to a greater or lesser degree from various individuals. But what does that actually mean on a practical level in terms of making sure that that business operation doesn't get affected as we go through the transition back into the workplace?
Love it. I love it. And you know what? It's bizarre because the stat you mentioned before around how many people, what was that stat, Nicola? Was it 5%? 5% compared to what will now be a whole shift. It could almost go the total opposite way. In terms of what have you seen from your clients? How have you seen that change, the shift from the whole 5% to where we are right now?
So the key things that we've seen some people who, from a well-being perspective, have embraced lone working from home. They appreciate not having to do the journey. They appreciate not having to spend cost on fuel. They're absolutely fine working in isolation at home. They get what they need out of communicating virtually. They don't need all these people around us. And then we have other people who are itching to get back to the office. They miss having the face-to-face. So we've got businesses talking with us who have employees from both different camps, and actually people at some point in between as well. So we've got people that want to go back to the office but they don't want to go back on a full-time basis. We've got people that would quite happily go back on a full-time basis, but interestingly not that many want to go back on a full-time basis. And I did see a poll, I should have brought it actually. I did see a poll on LinkedIn over the last couple of weeks where it was, state your emoji, whichever emoji it was, for how much, you wanted to get back to the office, whether it was full remote, partial working back in the office, or full back in the office. And something like 65, 70% of people wanted either full-time remote working through to kind of 2 to 3 days working from home. So what that suggests to us is, from an employee retention perspective, from a well-being perspective, from a from that turnover perspective, actually organisations, if they want to attract and retain the best people, then they have to be listening to what their people are saying, and they have to think about what that new normal, yes, looks like in the context of business outcomes, business performance, absolutely, but you don't get that without the people behind you. So it's thinking, on a practical level about how do we get a certain number of people back? Who do we decide? Do we actually run some sort of listening exercise, and do we get people back into the office in priority order, based on roles and necessity, but also based on who's itching to get back, who would rather not come back because they've got caring responsibilities, they're concerned about their own health, they're travelling further distances. So thinking on a practical level around risk assessments, the health and safety side, you know, thinking about the logistics of who's going to go back first, what that means from a technology perspective, what that means from a comms and you know, an IT perspective as well. All of those things to think about are really, really important. Those are just kind of that's an interim arrangement, isn't it? That's not even our permanent new normal. So businesses, fast forward, will even start having to think about what their new normal longer term looks like, what their people strategy longer term looks like, whether hybrid working, either from an individual or from a team level, is actually going to form part of their flexible working proposition for their employees much longer term. So there's a whole host of things that businesses need to be thinking about, and they don't need to rush and make decisions on any of this stuff just yet. It's really helpful to have it on the radar. It's really helpful to start speaking with teams about it, speaking with managers about it, and really understand from a practical level and also from a well-being level and an engagement level with their people, what that means in terms of you know, in terms of a project over the next few weeks into months.
Thank you, Nicola. And you're right. The big thing there is they don't have to do it now. It's something they need to be thinking about. The strand that I took from there is this is really going to be difficult because not one cap fits every size, if that makes sense. Because there are going to be elements of the business that want to stay working from home. There are going to be elements that want to have more of a home versus office. There are going to be elements that want more office. And I think it depends largely on a number of things. There's culture, historic culture. There's sector, because some sectors like to vibe off each other and feel the energy off each other. And I think it just comes down to personal preference. And I also think now that from a recruitment perspective, the motivations of candidates have changed historically, and organisations, as opposed to saying, listen, this is what we do here, they have to be aware of, if they want to attract or retain the best talent, they need to flex. So the big thing you talked about there is consultation, and I think that's probably one of the big takeaways organisations can have a plan on when's the end game, which is your longer term new working processes. What you're going to do now as we navigate the return to work roadmap, and how do we consult? Because you've probably never, consultation probably happens at a board level or then a line manager level. You probably don't get many opportunities in an organization where you have that level of consultation, but I think from this perspective, I think we definitely need it, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we generally find is businesses will run, you know, they'll run kind of engagement surveys, maybe on a 6-monthly or an annual basis. They might have suggestion boxes, they might have employee forums whereby they are, you know, meeting monthly and they're sharing ideas and they're giving an opportunity, you know, they're giving each employee an opportunity to have a say on things. But actually, this really hits home, doesn't it? This is something that kind of cuts across professional life, and actually also cuts across personal life as well. So even more, really, it's important to really kind of gauge the views of people.
Thank you. So say that again, sorry.
Not make assumptions, just not make assumptions that, you know, one size doesn't fit all.
And I think that's the biggest takeaway on that, the hybrid working. I think what we need to do is make sure that we glean the opinions of your staff. Now, listen, obviously the people that lead and run their organisations have got to make the final say. But I think you'd be really foolish and you'd be extremely myopic if you weren't willing to take into consideration. You know, we talk about employee engagement, we talk about building strong employee value propositions, we talk about building strong employer brands. If you're not listening to your people, you're not listening to the voice of the people in your organization, then you're going to inhibit that level of engagement and how productive you could be. Because actually, this is a great opportunity now to really get some extra buy-in from your team by them actually understanding that you care and you listen to what they want. So that would be my takeaway. And I think that'll be a great thing, because we've got the future, we've got now, and in order to establish how we do find our way there safely and knowing that everyone's been consulted, is to have that consultation process. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, there are also, you know, thinking about the practical side again and the legal side. If we're going to have permanent home working arrangements, if we're going to have permanent hybrid arrangements, we just need to think about the contractual implications of that as well. And again, one size doesn't fit all. It's about treating each one individually, but we do need to think about policies, agile working policies. We need to think about those arrangements in the context both of health and safety and also from an employment law perspective, a contractual perspective as well.
Lovely, Nicola. And in terms of if people want to speak with you about that, how do they get in touch with you to kind of, because I know you've got lots of really cool resources that you give for free, and how do people reach out to you and find out a little bit more about how you can help them get their business hybrid working, safe, secure, and compliant?
Yeah, so either connect on LinkedIn or our website dantonhr.com, and you can personally message me through there.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nicola. And before we speak to you, Andrew, I just really wanted to talk about, I don't want to plug my business, COVID Safe UK. It's incredibly busy over the last couple of weeks since the announcement that organisations are moving back to the office. What I would like to do is just to kind of highlight, there's a great on the hse.gov website, there's a great breakdown of the things that you need to do to get yourself back in the mix. And they revolve around 7 different areas. So I'll just briefly highlight those. One's risk assessment. So risk assessment's the best thing, and they've got a really cool HSE risk assessment template which you can utilize. We also have an ISO 45005, which is safe working practices, which I implore any organisation to do, where someone can come out to your organisation and they can remotely do an assessment, and they go into the workplace and make sure that you guys are COVID compliant for you guys to come back. Social distancing is the second one. Cleaning, hygiene, and hand washing is the third one. And the fourth one's ventilation and air conditioning, just to make sure that you're not giving an opportunity for anything that's airborne to stay there. The 3 things really that I wanted, and actually, Nicola, I'll just bring you in on there. The last 3 things are talking to workers to provide information. We're talking about that constant consultation. Working from home, to making sure that you've got, obviously we want everyone to come back, but from a health and safety perspective, doing regular checks. I think this may become quite litigious in the next 4 or 5 years, around people getting repetitive strain from working on their kitchen table as opposed to working on a table with the right height, or working with the right screens and visibility. So make sure that you're compliant from that perspective. But the big one, the last one really, is the vulnerable workers, because obviously we've talked around not just vulnerable workers from a mental and physical perspective, but just from a mental health perspective. And I know when I spoke with your colleague on the last call, we talked around organizations managing mental health, and that, again, like most situations or issues in a business, can be dealt with very quickly via communication. Talk just before we break off, and I'm sorry to bring you straight back in, because how are you advising organisations to make sure that they're looking after the physical and mental well-being of their staff in this new hybrid space?
Yeah, so for us, that's about those regular check-ins. It's about making sure that we're not just talking about work. We're making, we're checking in on people. We're checking in with people. We're making sure that they're okay. We're asking how families are. We are, really taking a genuine interest in how they're feeling. And actually, whether somebody is working from home or they are transitioning back into their workplace, it's just understanding how they feel about that, and just making, just making sure that any support that needs to be in place is in place for them. We don't always know about health issues that people have. We don't always know about health issues or concerns that families have. And actually, it's just about keeping those communication channels open. We do recommend that businesses have an employee assistance program in place as well, for pretty kind of very, very low annual cost. Businesses can put in place employee assistance programs which give their employees 24/7 access to helplines, whether that is about mental health and well-being, or whether that's just about financial concerns and changes that could have happened through the pandemic as a result of other circumstances that might have changed. Employee assistance programs give access to counselling support as well, that you might not necessarily want to speak in detail to your boss about, but actually your employer can provide the opportunity for you to fast track and get the help that you need. They don't need to know the detail of it. They just need to know that you're okay. And it's those sorts of things that we can really, that we can really encourage.
And again, like a lot of simple things just get dealt with good comms. I think someone said the other day, someone said, don't ask someone if they're all right once, ask them twice. First one is a default response. The second one, you may just get under the skin of something that you can address. And if you don't talk about stuff, and if you don't get people to open up, you're not going to be able to address those things. Thank you, Nicola. Thanks for me allowing you to kind of jump you back into my element. But feel free, anyone that's looking at making the workplace COVID secure during the corona pandemic, there's a HSE break checklist of 1 to 7, which I just briefly ran through. Have a little look at that, and if there's anything that anybody wants any support with, then feel free to reach out to me. Now, Andrew, without further ado, last but by no means least, we've got you on today, Andrew Lavoipierre from ActionCOACH. Absolute pleasure to bring back Andrew and his very unique and direct style. We love having you on the show, Andrew. Tell me a little bit about, before you go into it, tell me a little bit about why you thought it was pertinent to talk about business planning for the show, particularly where we're at now in V3 in terms of the pandemic. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts behind that.
Yeah, listen, Nick, it's for me, it's very close to, planning is close to my heart. You know, and the reality is that as you mentioned at the top of this of the show today, is that 95% of, statistically in the UK, 95% of businesses don't make their 10th anniversary. And there's very pretty robust evidence out there pointing pretty much directly and correlating directly to the lack of planning, or with no plan, or the lack of a robust plan. And you know, the planning is, there's many elements to planning. You know, but it's ultimately, you know, I guess the analogy that you know, I like to use a lot of the time when having this discussion is, you know, if you get given a destination, an address that you haven't been to before, if you get in your car and you just try and wing it, listen, you may get close, you may not get close. You know, but if you, once you put your sat nav on, your sat nav plans the route to your destination. It's the same principle. It's the same principle. If you don't have a plan in business, and it doesn't matter how, and here's one of the things that sort of I like to really stress. It doesn't matter how small your business is, or how new your business is, or how big your business is. All right, the same principle applies. You know, it's a plan. Planning is all about, you know, it's all about being able to view your business objectively every day, every single day. If you can build in planning to your daily routine, you are increasing your chances of success. All right, number one, achieving the 10-year anniversary, and number two, I have to assume, maybe rightly or wrongly, that all of us that go into business, you know, we go in for multiple reasons, but one of the primary reasons is that we want to, you know, have a decent lifestyle, and a plan just helps you to get to the destination and achieve the goals that you set when you set out on this business journey. And it's a lonely journey. Listen, all three of us here run our own businesses, and you know, it can be lonely. That's a fact. That's a fact. We have all sorts of pressures and you know, on us that come on ourselves as business owners, and the plan just gives a degree of clarity.
You know what, I think, and thank you for the intro and the summary, and you're right, 100%. None more so than a pandemic do you need a plan in the first place, because listen, most people are on their plan D, E's, some people might be on F's and G's. I'm certainly not far from that, because what the pandemic has taught you is there's uncertainty, so you have to, and I think, you know, there are a number of organizations, there are a number of roles that plan around disaster and disaster recovery and you know, critical outcomes, but they don't normally fall within the remit of the SME business planning community. But I think now, moving forwards, you know, that there may be a term that says, you know, you've done your plan, is that COVID safe? And that, you know, without being a throwaway comment, that says, you know, is it robust enough to take the test? You know, we talk about stress tests from a systems and a process perspective. We need our business plans to be stress testable, if that makes sense. So I know you're going to talk around the 10 reasons to make planning part of your daily routine. Give me a little summary of what that looks like.
Oh, listen, it's about habit, and you know, I'm going to talk about the 10, and I'm going to give sort of 10 reasons why you should look at planning. But if you can just hold it, if you know the audience can hold on to just one of these, all right, then my job here is done. It's not about all 10. Remember, planning is not about the plan. All right, it's not about the plan. It's about the continuous process of planning, and there's a big difference between that. Okay, and listen, if you if people don't have a plan right now, my advice to them is, and planning is something they haven't been doing. My advice is do this: take one A4 size sheet of paper and say, I'm going to put a plan together in one A4 size sheet of paper. That's the start. But you have to start somewhere. It's not all about this you know, the beautiful pictures and the great graphs and the great you know, this and the next thing. That's not what it's about. It's about the continuous process of planning. So you know, it's yeah. Listen, I mean, the 10 reasons that I sort of I hang on to are pretty simple, and you know, as you know, the two of you know me relatively well. I'm quite a simple guy. I don't overcomplicate things. You
I
know,
can vouch for that. I
and
can vouch for that. Can you vouch for that, Nicola?
I'm on mute because we had a biblical storm behind me, but yes, I can definitely vouch for that.
you know, number one, it helps to make critical decisions. All right. If you're going to spend, it doesn't, and once again, don't confuse big business and small business. All right. A small business, and a lot of small business, 500 quid is a lot of money. But if you're going to spend that money, all right, do you understand, all right, what your return on investment is going to be? That needs to be planned. If you don't have an idea what you expect, if you're going to spend 500 quid, all right, what you're going to return, you probably need to go back and go, well, what am I going to do? What needs to be done in order for me to double, triple, whatever, quadruple that investment? Because every pound that goes out of your business, right, is a pound spent. You have to have a return on that investment. You know, so it helps you makes critical decisions. It helps you iron out any kinks. You know, Nicola was talking earlier about systems and process. You know, do you have the right recruitment process in place? Because if you don't, listen, I'm not telling you to anything you don't already know, right? You're the experts. But if you don't have the right recruitment process in place, okay, it's going to end up costing your business money. That is a fact. All right. So, you know, engage with the likes of Nick, engage with the likes of Nicola. You know, that's why they're there. You know, and they can advise, you know, businesses on these things. But if you try and wing it and there's no plan in place, listen, you may get away with it. All right. I'm not suggesting that everybody who doesn't has a recruitment process in place is going to fail miserably. What I'm suggesting is that you've got to reduce your risk of failure, and planning helps. You know, helps to do that. You know, it helps to set benchmarks. You know, it helps to and benchmarks and I guess KPIs. All right, it helps you set very specific KPIs. All right, key performance indicators. Are you achieving your KPIs? Literally, as businesses, in my opinion, we don't have to go into too much detail every day, but sure, we need to be looking at our KPIs. Are we the direction of travel that we've set from a planning perspective? Are those being achieved? You know, it gets you to set your goals, and it enables you to track progress. Test and measure. Everything needs to be tested. Everything needs to be measured. If you're not testing it, all right, and you're not measuring it, you probably all right, or don't understand the true value or the return on investment of the money that you're spending in your business. It allows you to, I guess, communicate your those objectives and benchmarks that you've put in place in the plan with clarity across the business. You know, I come across a lot of businesses that are where the business owner or the business leader, you know, they have these wonderful business plans, and yet their team don't have access. These business plans are not shared. And it's not only internal stakeholders, but in my opinion, it should be. It gives you a degree of clarity for to be able to speak to external stakeholders as well. You know, and we're talking about things like, you know, your mission statements, your culture, you know, et cetera, et cetera. These, for me, are things that we should be talking about. All right, to our external stakeholders. You know, it helps you to secure funding. Planning helps you, it helps you secure funding. If you're looking to grow as a business and you do need funding, you know, the banks or the financial institutions who lend money are going to want to look at your plan, all right, and how robust the plan is. But not only your forward-looking plan, but they want to see historically as well how it is that the business has got from inception to where it is today.
The journey, yeah,
the journey. So, you know, and funding, we all know that it's difficult to get funding. It's easier to get funding if you can articulate and you can show where the journey that you come from.
Yeah, that potential. And you know what, and that's what quite relevant. Sorry to jump in there, because obviously most organisations have taken advantage of CBILS. Most organisations have taken advantage of bounce back, and anyone that's been through that process will know that there's quite a laborious business plan that's required. And those finances, you're right, they want to understand what's the journey, what's the potential. You know, can you articulate the potential of your business? And that's how you do it. You do it in either you know, the financials, but you also do it in the business plan in terms of the market, in terms of where you want to get to, in terms of how you've got to where you've got to, and how you see that you see you attacking the future. Sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
No, that's cool. It's a good point. You know, it helps you to better understand your business, but also it helps you specifically to understand the market landscape. It helps you understand your competition. If you're planning correctly, you should know what, you know, there should be aspects in there about your competition. What are your competition? Who are your competition? It understands your specific niche, the landscape of your specific niche. You know, it helps you to reduce risk. The better and more robust your plan, the lower the risk is to your business. You know, it's quite simple, you know, that this should be part of every business leader or business owner daily routine. And then I guess for me, they're all important. The last one is this: it's about accountability. All right, a plan in your head, if it's not written down, a plan in your head just doesn't exist. All right, if you've got a plan and you share the plan, doesn't matter with who. You know, I'm a coach, but you share it with the person you're going to, and say to the person and commit to being held accountable for that plan. That's what it's about, and it's got nothing to do with anything else other than, if you want to get to where you're going, you have to be held accountable. All right, because otherwise, if it sits in your head, these plans, which, trust me, so many businesses tell me, oh, I've got a plan, show me. No, it's in my head. Okay, I can have a plan in my head today, but trust me, if I haven't shared it with anybody and it's in my head, I can change that plan 35 times today, all right, because it suits me, because the day hasn't gone quite as well as it should have. All right, guess what? I've lowered my expectations. Instead of doing, I don't know, let's just use a round figure, 10 grand of sales, I've only done 5K of sales today. All right, guess what? In my head, I'm saying, oh, that's cool. You know, so it's about accountability.
I'm going to jump in on that final one, because I think that's the biggest thing, and this is the reason why a lot of people have business coaches, because you're not accountable to anyone. You may be accountable to the bank, but really that's on your financial viability of any liabilities you've got with them. You may be accountable to an investor if you've got one, but generally it's quite a lonely place. And It's also a place where you're not really accountable. So you're right 100%. If it's in your head, you can give yourself any reason you want for not nailing it. And we know how hard it is in terms of there's a lot of procrastination that happens in the head of a business person. You can have your plan in your head, procrastinate for 6 months before you've lost 2 quarters and you're nowhere anywhere further. So the big thing for me, and I know it's the last thing you want to talk about, that big one for me is the accountability bit. It's the accountability bit, and it's not just accountability from, you're not just accountable to yourself, you're accountable to your business. You've got people in your business that you're responsible for their livelihoods. They need to understand that plan. They need to be part of that plan. And it links in quite a bit with everything we talked around communication. We should do one on communication. We should do a Survive to Thrive on communication, because that plan, they should be part of that plan. We had a business plan exercise yesterday with 2 of the one-to-ones that I did, and they feed into that same team, which feed into another team, which feed into my bigger business. Without those plans, no one can review to find out if you've been doing well. No one can then review the KPIs to find out if we need to tweak anything, and no one can be held accountable on what they agreed they were going to do in that plan. So that point there is a great. Go on, have you got another thing?
Sorry,
to say
I
there?
just wanted to say just to add to that, Nick. And it's not the plan in terms of sharing the plan and KPIs and et cetera, is not about. And a lot of people think that sharing the plan is about a finger pointing. For me, it's quite simple. It's the part. And let's just look at KPIs for the sake of an argument. The KPIs are set, they agreed, and then the question is from the business leader. As far as this, for me, is a killer question. All right, to every business leader or department head or whatever should be asking. All right, we've set the KPIs. Cool. You happy with the KPIs? Yes. What do you need from me? All right, in order for you to achieve those KPIs. All right, and those are the kinds of questions, and this is what planning does. This is what it should do. It should pull all of this stuff out, all right, into the open, okay, and those kind of questions should be asked.
I love it, Andy. I love it, and it's a great one. It's a great one to finish on. We're just on point in terms of timings. First of all, I wanted to say a massive thank you to Nicola Roke from Danton HR. I want to say a massive thank you to Andy Lavoipierre from ActionCOACH. Again, 2 great subjects, really pertinent, and some real practical takeaways for people that are watching the show. As I said previously, if anybody wants to reach out to both Andy or Nicola, you can get them on LinkedIn, on their LinkedIn profile. I hope you found today very useful. Thank you guys for giving your time, effort and expertise on today's subject matters to share with the IsoNation and the Survive to Thrive community. And I look forward to catching up with you all very soon over a beer. Now that we've got the roadmap to recovery, and I hope everyone has a safe and fantastic weekend. Cheers, guys.